Hello there. It's been quite a while since I was on and posted a video, so I thought today would be a good day to come on and get you guys up to speed on everything that's been happening. I believe today would be, I believe it's about day 45 or so since I started this process with my designing my mental health journey. Um, I've had some good days and bad days, again, over the past week or so. And just thought I'd come on, like I said, and get you guys up to speed. So, thankfully, I have been finding that my sleep has been a lot better. And I, mostly attribute that to the difference in the stress level. Not that I don't still have lots of things going on and stuff like that, but you know, just taking a lot of steps to make sure that I'm reducing my stress level and trying to get certain pieces under control. That's what I basically contribute most of my the change in my sleep patterns and stuff too. You can't be 100% certain, but that's I think that would be a fair assumption to make. Uh, just to let everybody know, I did have my another appointment with my GP and got all my blood work back and stuff. I had been investigating some different concerns about whether or not I might have some thyroid issues happening, and just different symptoms that I was suffering from. And good news, all of my blood work actually came back normal, so I was really, really happy to hear that. And so there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with my thyroid. Another thing that I was really concerned about was my iron levels, because I have anybody who knows me, I have had a lot of issues with iron in the past. So that had been a concern, but thankfully all of that came back normal. And I have been, doing a lot with my diet and stuff like that to try to make sure that I'm getting all the nutrients that I need, because obviously, as stated in another video that I posted, from YouTube about the importance of nutrition when it comes to mental health. Um, I've been taking a lot of steps to try to make sure that I'm getting all the nutrients and stuff that I need. And hydration as well is really important. So thankfully, all of the blood work came back normal. I did end up asking my GP to switch my stomach medication for the acid reflux, because if I had suspected that if it wasn't a thyroid issue that was happening, with the pain and everything that I was having in the base of my neck, and I mean, I was having some pretty serious, digestive issues as well on top of it. So I asked her to change my stomach medication, because I don't know if you've been following along. I had been, she had advised me to start taking ranitidine on a regular basis, and I ended up having, I had a really bad breakout of hives. So I don't know, I can't say for certain that that was the ranitidine that caused that, but I didn't want to take any chances with it. And fortunately, I did have her switch me to another medication, which is called pantoprazole, and that one has been working quite well. I've been taking that now for probably 4 or 5 days, and I have been noticing a really big difference. And that's actually another thing that's I'm finding has really improved my sleep as well, because those symptoms were really interfering with my sleep and stuff as well. So thankfully that has improved a lot. Um, I am still working my way through some of the EAP, the homework that the EAP counselor had given me, in terms of managing anxiety and different things like that. So that's been, helpful. It's been very, it's a good process to go through in terms of trying to, get a really good handle on all of the things that could be impacting you and your mental health. So I'm working my way through that. I did have my first session with the Eastern Health Counselor, and I have to say, I just can't express how important it is to go out and seek help. when you need it, because everybody has been, for the most part, fantastic when it comes to, the responses and stuff that I've gotten in trying to seek help through this process. So my first session with him was actually quite long, and it was really, really helpful, very informative. I definitely felt like he understood, a lot about what I was going through, and some of the things that I've been dealing with. And so I've been fortunate enough that he's actually added me to his regular roster of clients. So I do have another appointment with him coming up next week. And I'll be doing some preparation ahead of time for that as well. Because, like I mentioned before, in one of my previous videos, it's really important to take the lead role when it comes to working with the counselors and stuff. So I just want to make sure that I'm making it as effective a process as possible. Um, I am still investigating some other options through the Eastern Health, you know, um, mental health and addictions program, for some other issues and concerns that I'm, having with my extended family and different things like that. And I have to say, it's like opening Pandora's box. It might seem like opening Pandora's box in some ways, because there's lots of different things going on, but the more that I have, delved into the support systems that are available and started to get some of the things addressed, the issues addressed, that I've been dealing with, the more that I come to realize that, this stuff has been way, way delayed in getting looked after. So, these are really, really positive pieces for me that are starting to kind of fall into place, I feel like, across the board. And as I've said before, no man is an island. So if this stuff is impacting me, obviously there's other people in my life that have been impacted as well. And so the more that I learn, and I'm a big proponent of this kind of stuff anyways, because the more that I learn and the more help and support that I get, it not only helps other people to to reach out and hopefully get that help as well. But it in some way, shape, or form, when you give yourself permission to do those things, one has to hope that you'll inspire others to do the same. And so, I really hope that through my recording these videos and going through this process, that some other people who are, and especially people who are really struggling, will start to reach out and get some help as well. So, and like I said, I've been very pleased with the amount of support and resources that are out there. And you do have to take a very active role in seeking those out. So, by all means, one of the biggest ones that one of the biggest websites that I would really like to start promoting and kind of trying to point people in the right direction of, is a website called Bridge the Gap. And that website, it's a Bridge the Gap, GAPP, and it's a Eastern Health website, and the resources on there are phenomenal. I actually started going through one of the programs that they had set up for youth as well, just because these are online programs that you can take, when it comes to mindfulness, dealing with anxiety and depression and different things like that. So, and I mean, these things are free to avail of. So I was quite curious about that, and I started going through some of those as well. So those are all really positive pieces. Um, so yeah, with regards to getting help, and like I said, giving myself permission to go out and start getting some of this stuff addressed. um, I think that has alleviated a lot of my stress as well. Like, just feeling like you have a support system in place, you have resources available to you, and that you're not having to kind of just try to fumble your way through this stuff alone. It feels like a lot less of a burden to carry. So, again, I can't stress enough how important it is to reach out and start seeking some help. Uh, I did have some really challenging days over the past week or so, in terms of really almost like I would call it extreme fatigue and brain fog. So, and I contribute this, I guess, it goes back to the whole everything that's happening with my brain. And I'm going to get into a little bit later on in this video. I'm going to get into a little bit more of a timeline as to what's been happening with me. Um, but I did have a couple of really challenging days over the past week, when it came to fatigue and stuff. So I had been, trying to increase my activity level. I always feel like there's always so much benefit attached to the exercise piece, and trying to get out of the house and get fresh air and things like that. But this is where I have found that I have to be really careful in finding the right balance, because I don't know if it's because there's certain days, when the sun was shining and the weather started to get warm, that I might have overdone it a little bit. And that seems very likely because, with any kind of a, brain injury or trauma related, I guess, symptoms, um, being becoming overstimulated or overdoing it is something that you really have to be careful about managing. And the same goes for concussions and stuff as well. So that's something that people need to be really aware of. But I did have a couple of days where I was trying to get out and walk a lot, and I might have overdone it because I found after doing that for a couple of days, I actually got completely taken off my feet again for 2 or 3 days, between in kind of in the middle of the past week. And so it can be really scary when that hits, because it's a setback, right? Like, and you're going through this journey of recovery, and you're taking all of these steps to try to make yourself, to feel better, and to find your way through to recovery and stuff. And when you have these setbacks, especially at the level that I seem to be having them, it can be a scary time. So I actually found myself for a couple of days, not just suffering from, chronic fatigue, but also I had this brain fog that it just felt like my brain wasn't operating properly. So it's almost like a numbness. It almost goes beyond the brain fog. It's kind of like like I just felt like my brain wasn't even functioning. And so I had a couple of days there where I just had to step back and go like, wow, like I can't think of anything else to do here other than focus on my nutrition and make sure that I was getting lots of rest. And that thankfully, that seemed to work really well. I forced myself to nap during the days. I really took it easy physically for a few days, and I seem to have bounced back again. But like I've said many times, since I started recording this video series, it's one of those things where you have to really be careful about finding the right balance, and pacing yourself as you go through the process, because you know it's very, very easy to overdo it. And when you find yourself slipping back into those symptoms, especially as severe as what they've been, um, you really have to pace yourself and take care of yourself. So practicing the self-care piece, has been a really big thing for me. So thankfully, the last couple of days, I've been doing a lot better again. I'm, like I said, I'm sleeping well. I've been, those few days really forced me to, and I had some really severe gut issues going on as well. So, between all that, it really forced me to go even deeper into the nutrition thing. And I started cutting out, now, I mean, I have had some in the last couple of days, but, I had a few days there where I completely cut out sugar. I even had days where I wouldn't have a cup of coffee, and just trying to stay really super focused on getting the right nutrients and hydration in my body. And, thankfully, when I did that, I seemed to recover faster. Um, so the other thing that I did have done over the past week was I had those X-rays done on my right shoulder. Um, they actually did quite a few X-rays. They did my chest, they did my armpit because I did feel like it might have something to do with the lymph node in my right armpit. But thankfully, the pain in my upper arm seems to have settled down a lot. Um, but I've still been having some pain and discomfort and stuff on my right side, and I don't know if that's related to the digestive issues that I've been having or not. But anyways, they did quite a few X-rays, and they did my chest, my back, my shoulder, and my right arm, and all that. So I don't have those results back yet. Hopefully, again, it will come back normal. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. It's always a relief. But like I said, psychosomatic symptoms, you just never know. It can be very hard to tell. So, sometimes you have to take everything that's happening to you with a grain of salt, and just, stay positive and stay focused on the things that are going to keep you well. Um, so one of the things that I really wanted to talk about in this video, and I've already touched on it a fair bit, is about the whole piece about seeking help and stuff. And I don't know if I've been extremely clear about how I came to be in this position, and you know how that all unfolded for me. So I just want to give a quick summary, especially for anybody who's new on here, following along with this. But basically, I was working in an extremely stressful position, managing a community care home in mental health and addictions. Um, you know, Last year, 2020, was an extremely brutal year in terms of stress. We had an awful lot going on in the home. And, between the mix of COVID and a bed bug scare and a bunch of different things that were happening with residents and things like that, I ended up, by the time November of last year came around, I really started to feel unwell. And I had had a conversation with my GP at that time, about uh, because I knew, that the stress was starting to kind of pile up on me a little bit and stuff, and I was starting to experience some symptoms then. And so I had the conversation with my GP at that time, about, I asked the question, how do you know when you get to the point where it's just too much? And her response at the time was, of course, it's different for everybody, so you're the only person who can determine that. Um, and we all got bills to pay, and I loved my job, so I just basically chalked it up to, well, it's been a tough year. I guess I'll just soldier on. um, but by the time February came, I I started to realize that, and it's easy for me to sit back now and look at it and say that was a really big mistake, because what ended up happening to me was that I didn't pay enough attention to the symptoms that I was experiencing at the time. I ended up working my way through Christmas and New Year's and January, and by the time February rolled around, I just found myself completely and utterly depleted, in every sense. So I was physically, mentally, and emotionally drained, and I didn't realize at the time, even at the time, I didn't realize how bad it had gotten. But it wasn't until I kind of stepped back and said, like, I really need to do something here. I need to address this. That it wasn't until I stepped back and did that I really started to realize just how much everything was impacting me, because I was constantly in a state of hypervigilance. My body was constantly in fight or flight mode. Um, I felt I was under so much stress and you know attention at the time, that I just it was really starting to impair my functioning ability, throughout the day. So I was having things like constant panic. I felt like I was in a constant panic attack. I was often waking up in the middle of the night with, what felt like panic attacks. I was having hot and cold sweats. I was having chest pain. I was experiencing numbness and tingling throughout my body. I was having severe gut issues. I was having a lot of pain in my head and my eyes. It just, the list goes on and on. And like I said, and the fatigue was just constant, like I was just constantly in a state of fatigue. And so, it was all of that started to kind of come together for me that made me realize that I need to step back here and I need to address this because this is going it I recognize that from November to February it had started to go in a really negative direction and I was definitely on a downward spiral. So that's kind of how I ended up taking time off work, and I ended up having to step away and start to address some of this stuff that was going on with me. So it was through that process that I started to do some research around burnout and chronic fatigue syndrome and secondary trauma, and actually ended up looking at complex post-traumatic stress disorder because at the same time that I was, suffering from all these symptoms, for the past 6 months or so, before I actually, came, started to take time away from work, I had been dealing with a couple of individuals who had suffered from a lot of trauma. And it was through working, with those individuals as well that I started to kind of put some puzzle pieces together and things started to fall into place for me in terms of what I had been dealing with, for a really long time. And also how the stress that I was under at the time had started to really impact me. So I think all of those things coming together, ended up, creating this really toxic mix for my, my body and my brain and my system that just basically, my body was just, it was in a severe reaction mode. My body was saying like enough, like you can't keep doing this to yourself. So that's kind of how I ended up here. But I guess the notes, the important notes that I'd like for people to take away from that is, you know, whether it's complex post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it's just post-traumatic stress disorder, whether it's secondary trauma, whether it's burnout, compassion fatigue, you name it. This stuff is it's it's something that you don't necessarily see it coming. And we're all so conditioned to put up and shut up and charge through and believe that we're somehow invincible to all this stuff. And I'm living proof that this stuff can creep up on you and you could find yourself in a position that you never thought you'd be in. And I mean, I've been, and I've said this before, I've been a pretty resilient individual. I've been a very high functioning individual. I've done a lot in my life. I've accomplished a lot. And, I've done incredibly well, considering everything. But that's one of the reasons why I think it's important for people to kind of start paying attention to this stuff, because you might start to pick this stuff up in other people as well. If you see people who are suffering from, they seem to be suffering from chronic fatigue, or they seem to be suffering from, you may rage is another, like displaced anger they call it. Symptoms of that kind of thing. Like if you see somebody whose behavior changes, and it seems like sudden, and you may not be sure where it came from, or if you're experiencing those things within yourself. Fortunately for me, throughout this process, in particular, I haven't experienced all of those symptoms necessarily, like the rage piece, and I've talked about that before. But the rage piece is not something that I'm currently dealing with. but it certainly has been there in the past. And one of the things that I learned from the Eastern Health counselor last week when I spoke to him was that they refer to that as displaced anger, from adverse childhood experiences. So, there's so much, that can be going on with us, that we're dealing with throughout our lives, and we don't even recognize, or we're not able to um, realize that all of this stuff can impact us in ways that we just have no idea about. So, you know, I would never want anybody to think that, oh, this is something that you can see coming, and that, that there's just this clear path to, resiliency, and being able to avoid this stuff. I mean, there is certainly information out there, and there's lots of people who are trained in, resiliency, and got lots of training around, how to deal with trauma, and those different things. But um, if people have the notion that, this is something that you can see coming, you got to be really careful about that, because I can speak from experience now to say that as much as I knew that something was going on, that things were not necessarily right in my world, um, and I wasn't feeling great, I had no idea where this was going to lead for me. And so, hindsight's always 2020, but looking back now, it's very clear to me that, when I was feeling the way that I was back in November, I should have kind of sat up and paid more attention to that, and dealt with it then. And so, I mean, obviously for me, I'm already here, and I'm, addressing it, and things are going well, knock on wood. I'm grateful for all of the recovery that I have made so far, but it is a bit of a process. And this past week has shown me once again, I'm not out of the woods yet. It is a process, and it takes time, and you have to give yourself that time to recover. So um, I think that's about everything that I wanted to to cover for today. I know I do recognize that it's been quite some time since I've been on here, but like I said, it's a process of recovery, and it's a journey. So I'm kind of in it for the long haul. So I hope to be able to come back a little bit more frequently, and share some more information with you guys. I've still been taking in loads when I am feeling well and stuff, and there's lots of useful information in there for people, uh, at least people like me who are dealing with some of these things. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully I'll be back again soon. And thanks for following along. Bye for now.